Okay, there's Apala from Kolkata. Then I see a few new names. See Shubhashish, organization named ASA through right-based approach. Shubhashish, what is the full form of ASA? If you could just type it in, if you're listening.
Its full form is Action for Social Advancement. It's
Okay,
an
okay.
NGO.
All right, all right. Okay. Then you have Adarsh from MCPR BHU, okay. Anyone else? I see Janessa. Hi. Hi.
Good evening, Sohini. Hi, nice to be here. This is quite a turnout. Hello, everybody. Good morning from California. Very early this morning.
Is any discussion taking place at all? Am I missing all of it? I don't know. Share, participate, no. What? I do transcript, audio, peer feedback.
Sandeep? Sandeep, you there? I can't hear you.
I think Sandeep's microphone is muted.
No, his microphone is not muted.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, you're audible now. I think we should begin. We are. It's 8:40, so we should begin. People will gradually join, I guess.
Can anyone hear me, or am I just?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you. Yes.
Okay, thanks. This is my first time Zoom meeting, so sorry.
We'd appreciate if you can mute yourself if possible.
Okay.
Yes, just there's a mute button, Orko. So if you could just mute yourself, it'll be easier for us to proceed.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And you could also type your name, where you're calling in from, and your organization or your affiliation in the chat box. Thanks. Sandeep, you good to go?
Yeah. So welcome everyone on a day of unprecedented internet blackouts and detentions. We are here to launch Constitution. Constitution is going to be a new public education platform for finding solutions to problems which are at the intersection of law and society. We hope to do this through a new form of dialogue through the internet using technology. Constitution, to start with, is not any kind of political campaigning platform. It will deal with every topic through the lens only and only through of the Indian Constitution. A quick introduction to our team at today. We have Sohini Jana, who is our in-house facilitator. She's joined by Farah Iman, who is our guest facilitator of the day. Our session will be moderated by Suvi Dhupar from URI. Sayantini Jana will be curating the questions in the text box. So if you have any questions, please put them there. My name is Sandeep Narwani, and I'll be doing the tech support for the call. Before we start the session, we will have a minute for Mr. Victor, who is the Executive Director from URI, to welcome everyone.
Thank you, Sandeep. So it's with heavy heart and yet an inspired heart filled with courage at the presence and work that all of you and so many other sisters and brothers are doing at this moment to engage issues of human rights, issues of dignity of all people, issues of inclusion and diversity in India and in countries around the world. The purpose of so many political movements right now that seek to divide people along identity lines is to separate coalitions of people of all identities, of all cultures and beliefs, so that people can be controlled and fail to mobilize along the causes of justice and peace and human rights. So we gather today in solidarity with each other and with the thousands and millions of people across India, across South Asia, around the world, who refuse to be divided from each other and who see our common humanity as essential for our sustaining life in human community and on this planet. So I feel blessed and inspired to be in your presence. I am here to stand with you in solidarity. I was in India only a week or so ago. And that what's happening here in this gathering, in this formation of constitution, is both essential not only for India and throughout South Asia, but for the world. And so the gift that you give is this gift of being able to ground in these fundamental principles of dignity and human rights. And so thank you. And it's just powerful to be in all of your presence.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Victor. Over to you, Sohini and Farah.
Okay, so good evening again and welcome. Without much ado, what I would like to do is introduce our first guest speaker today evening, which is Mr. Mihir Desai. So we are going to be talking about citizenship. As you know, there is a new act which is created ripples across the nation. And it is, I believe, very important for us to understand the legal connotation, the implications, the concept in the light of the Constitution. And who else but Mr. Mihir Desai to give us the highlights and a good understanding of the same. So a little bit about Mr. Mihir Desai is that he's a senior human rights lawyer who has extensive experience in handling cases of mass murders, riots, fake encounters, custodial deaths. He has worked for freedom of speech and with journalists, political activists, prisoners of conscience, genocide. He's worked with genocide probes. He has also been practicing in the Bombay High Court and is at present going to be challenging the Constitutional Amendment Act in the Supreme Court on behalf of the People's Union of Civil Liberties, where he holds the position of the National Vice President. We would like to bring him on board. And sir, over to you. Do let us know what you think of this law and give us an idea of your concepts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here. Thanks, Welcome to all of you. I will try to make it as non-legal as possible, which is a difficult task for me, but I'll still try and attempt it. You see, we need to start with the whole notion of what does citizenship entail, in the sense that why is citizenship so important? Before democracy really set into our world, we had all kinds of totalitarian regimes, empires, you had kingdoms, etc., where you had the state and you had the subjects. You didn't have citizens. It is only with the coming in of, well, at least in the present era, only from the 17th century, 18th century, that the concept of citizenship establishes itself. And citizenship essentially can be seen as a right to have rights. That's how one would broadly define citizenship, that it's important to have rights, and it's important to have the right to have rights. Now, if you see, initially it was basically civil rights, then it became political rights, and then over a period it has become social and economic rights. So if I am a citizen, I am entitled to freedom of speech, expression. I'm entitled to stay anywhere in India. I'm talking in the Indian context because citizenship concept differs a little bit from place to place. I am entitled to hold property. I am entitled to access government schemes, whether it be pension schemes, whether it's the ration system. So it gives me, apart from the fact that I have a right to vote as a citizen, and right to therefore participate in the government, I also have the right to reside in the country of which I am the citizen. And so citizenship has various rights. It's not that the foreigners or those who are not the citizens in a country don't have any rights. They would have right of equality. They would have right of life and liberty. But citizenship itself gives you a whole bundle of rights, which is much more than what a foreigner would get or an alien would get. Now, this is the broad concept of citizenship. In India, especially after independence, if you see, the first discussion on citizenship is in the Constitution of India, which came on 26th January 1950. The Constitution basically provided who would be treated as citizen of India at the time when the Constitution came into being. That is on 26th January 50. Who are to be treated as citizens. Essentially, it provided that those who have been born and who are residing in India will be treated as citizens of India, apart from a few exceptions for people who migrated at that time, at the time of partition, from various other countries. The Constitution also allowed the Parliament to make a law concerning citizenship for future. And that is what we are concerned with right now, because in 1955, a citizenship law came. And that citizenship law basically provided for 5 ways of acquiring citizenship. One is, of course, by birth, that you are born here. Second is by registration. You get married to somebody, you register yourself. Third is by naturalization. Naturalization is, again, by staying here for 12 years, 13 years, you apply for citizenship, saying, I want to be a citizen here. Then it's by incorporation of territory, like Sikkim became part of India, so all Sikkimis became Indian citizens, etc. So these are the various ways in which citizenship was allowed. Now remember one thing, at no stage, neither at the time of partition, which was, remember, Pakistan became a separate state on the basis of religion. Yeah. Neither at the time of partition nor in any of the subsequent amendments or subsequent enactments is there any talk of religion. Okay. So you would be a citizen of India if you satisfied certain criteria, irrespective of whether you are a Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Sikh, whatever. Okay? So if you're born in India, say after 1950, you would automatically be a citizen of India. Doesn't matter where your father was born, at least till 1987 when the law changed. But I'm not really bothered about it. Presently, today, we are not really concerned with that. Now, what happens is that in 2003, a new law is brought in. The new law, the law is, there is an amendment to the existing law that is brought in. And what the amendment does is, it provides that those who have been born before 2004 in India they will not automatically get citizenship of India unless they are able to show that one of their parent was an Indian citizen at the time of their birth, that person's birth, and that the other parent is not an illegal migrant. Okay? So if your father is a citizen of India at the time of your birth, you would ordinarily get Indian citizenship as long as your other parent is not an illegal migrant. Now, illegal migrant was defined as a person who has come to India without valid travel documents, or who has come with valid travel documents but has overstayed in the country. So this was defined as illegal migrant. So this is where the present CAB comes in, because what happens is today, if you are an illegal even if you are a child of an illegal migrant, you will not be entitled to citizenship. Okay? That's one aspect which one needs to bear in mind. 2003 also brought in what is called the NRC rules, with which we are presently dealing with. That is National Registration of Citizens rules, which is under the Citizenship Act. Now, this NRC rules provide that there can be a national registration of citizens, that every citizen will be registered nationally. Okay? And if you are found not to be a citizen, or if there is a doubt that you are a citizen of the country, okay, then you can be you can be prosecuted, and you can be put in a detention camp, and you can be ultimately be thrown out of the country. That's one aspect. So national citizens registration is one aspect. Now, what happened is in Assam, they implemented the NRC, that is national registration. Assam has a slightly different citizenship law, but I need not go into it right now. But the point is that they implemented NRC in Assam. When they implemented NRC in Assam, about 19 lakh, that is 190,000 persons, were declared to be non-citizens. They were not part of the citizens register, and this happened in 2019, okay, when the final list came out. But out of these 12, the belief of the government was that all these, or overwhelming majority of these, would be Muslims. Okay? But when they actually did the computation, it came out that about 120,000 or 130,000 of these were not Muslims. Okay? And therefore the problem arose, because if you are a government, okay, which is essentially basing yourself on Hindutva, that is that this is a nation for Hindus and the infiltrators have to go out, etc., kind of thing, then such a large number of Hindus being declared as illegal migrants would make it very difficult for them to control the vote bank. So at that stage they came out. So that's this idea of CAB, which is the present dispute which is going on, was floated. And the idea of CAB is what? That, okay, even if you are an illegal migrant, so ordinarily an illegal migrant under the Citizenship Act, if you are an illegal migrant, you cannot get citizenship even by naturalization. You may stay here for 50 years, you will not get citizenship. That's the law. Okay. So they said that, okay, if you are an illegal migrant, you will not get citizenship. Okay, ordinarily. But if you are an illegal migrant from Afghanistan, Pakistan, or Bangladesh, and belong to the minority community in those countries, which is Hindus, Sikhs, Jains, Catholics, etc., then you will be entitled to claim citizenship of India. Okay, so essentially what they have done is that for 3 countries, India, Pakistan, and Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan, they have carved out this kind of an exception for certain communities, okay, in order to give them citizenship once this NRC process starts. This is basically what is going to happen. Now, what is the problem with this? The problem is twofold. First of all, nobody can say, I mean, I wouldn't argue that persecuted minorities should not be given citizenship rights in India. No, I'm not for a moment suggesting that. But yes, if you're a persecuted minority and if India has a wherewithal, it should give citizenship. No, that's one aspect. But can you make a distinction on the basis of religion? That's the point. Because at one stage it was argued that we are selecting only three countries, that is Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, because these are the wounds of partition which have been festering. That was the argument. But Afghanistan was never part of India. So wounds of partition festering in vis-a-vis Afghanistan, that issue doesn't arise. So Afghanistan is never part of India. So this partition issue went on a back burner. If you see, in reality, okay, you had hundreds of thousands of religious and other otherwise persecuted persons from Tamils from Sri Lanka coming into India. Okay? They have not been included. You have Rohingyas coming in from Myanmar, persecuted Rohingyas. They have not been included. You have Ahmadiyas who are from Pakistan and who are persecuted. They have not been included. So what's the purpose of including these, including only certain persons from certain religion and excluding others? That I think that is one of the most important things. And my personal feeling is that that what the Indian government is trying to convey is that persecuted.
I think there has been a problem with the bandwidth. Sandeep, there is a little bit of a difficulty. The video is frozen. If you could take a look, please.
It's fine now.
Fine now?
Yes, it's fine now. It's fine now. Yeah.
Okay. Should I continue from where I stopped?
Yes, sir. Please.
I mean, I'm about to finish, but let me just continue from where I stopped. So the other thing, so the idea which is sought to be conveyed is only those who belong to the religion of Islam can be fundamentalists. And therefore, we are not including Burma, which is a Buddhist, which is an overwhelmingly Buddhist population, or Sri Lanka, which is avowed Buddhist state, into these categories, and we will not include them. We will only include certain people from certain persecuted minorities belonging to a particular religion from these three countries. Now, this, to my mind, is a basic attack on the Constitution of India, which talks about equality, which talks about freedom of religion, which talks about life and personal liberty. Okay? Where you start making a distinction, okay, between as to whom you are going to give citizenship on the basis of religion, rather than on the basis of, if the idea is to give citizenship on the basis of persecution, there are many other candidates belonging to other religions, other countries, other religions, etc., etc. Even neighboring countries. I'm not talking about the world. Neighboring countries, there are many other candidates. So why have you excluded them? Once you get this idea of granting citizenship on the basis of religion, one doesn't know where it will end. And so it has to be stopped here and now. You want to give persecuted minorities citizenship of, say, Pakistan, then give it also to Ahmadiyas. Okay, if they are, since they are persecuted. You want to give you want to give it to Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan, give it to Myanmar, which is having a huge problem for the Rohingyas. So if you are not doing that, then obviously you are attacking the secular fabric of the state. And remember one thing, this is, do I have 1 minute more? Sure. Okay. Remember one thing, this is not just a question of, you see, a lot has been argued by the government saying that how will it affect the Indian Muslim citizens? That it will not affect the Muslim citizens of India. Okay? But who and how are you going to decide who is a Muslim citizen and who is not? Because that will be a huge problem. Because when I go, suppose tomorrow there is an NRC and I am supposed to prove that I am an Indian citizen. If I am a Muslim, I am staying here for 100 years. Or I've never seen Pakistan in my life. I was born and brought up here. My grandfather were born and brought up here. But because of the nature of the situation in India, I may have no document to show that I was born here. And that's possible for hundreds of thousands of people. They may have no document to show that they were born in India. That is true for Hindus, Muslims, Christians, everyone. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So, what I was saying was that as a Muslim, okay, even if I am otherwise entitled to citizenship, because of the absence of documents, I would be told that I am not an Indian citizen. and I'll be asked to leave, or I'll be put in a detention camp. But if I am a Hindu or a Christian, okay, or a Sikh or a Buddhist, and if I do not have, and I am also been here all throughout for 100 years, okay, I have also been throughout. My answer would be that I have come from Pakistan. Okay, I have come from Pakistan. I don't have any proof that I have come from Pakistan because I was persecuted there. So all my documents are taken away there. So how can I prove I have come from Pakistan? But I have come from Pakistan. So give me citizenship here. So persons equally situated here, both, I mean Hindus and Muslims, otherwise equally situated, both staying for 200 years. Okay, both not having documents. One citizenship. This would out of the citizenship. Okay. So, this is how a large number of countries. This is what is causing this.
Mihir sir, you're on mute, unfortunately. You have to unmute yourself. It's on the left-hand corner.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. There is someone who is not on mute. That's why there's some background noise. So we just give us a second, sir. We'll just see.
Yeah.
Everyone's muted, so we can't figure out where the noise is coming from.
Is it coming from my end? I don't think so.
No, there's a few that haven't been, that look like they're not on mute.
Yes, somehow there seems to be a couple of people. So, yes. I would request everyone to kindly put themselves on mute. It's on the left-hand corner of your screen. Left-hand corner, at the left-hand corner of your screen. So if you could just put yourself on mute in case we've missed. I think.
Can Subi do that?
Yeah, I think others are on mute now.
Okay, no, I was just ending. I was just saying that
yeah, so we'll be taking questions soon, sir.
Yeah, just give me a minute.
Yes, of course. Yes, sir.
I was only saying this, that there are two problems with this CAT. One is on the face of it, it violates equality. That's one aspect. But more problematic is the fact that at the ground level, in a country like India where people do not have documents, it's going to cause tremendous problem when the NRC comes in, especially for the Muslim community, because they cannot resort to an argument that I have come from Pakistan because I was persecuted or something like that, which others can. And this will lead to a huge fallout. And I personally feel that it is in this, it is both these contexts, namely equality as well as the ground level reality, that we have to look at this amendment, and it is in that context that we would be challenging the amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That was a very, very informative session. So where we actually explored the concept of citizenship and how historically, and then we looked at how we are linking it to the Constitution and what the NRC is bringing us, then historically the case in Assam, and how right now the possible motives behind the introduction of the CAB in order to counter a certain kind of unexpected consequence of the NRC in Assam. So that was a very, very informative session. Thank you so much. We'll be taking questions. I would be requesting people to keep the questions short and concise, so that we could actually encourage more questions later. We'll be curating the questions and going for a reflection session at the end, which would be handled by Shantini. And right now we'll be taking around 3 to 4 questions. So I would like you to please raise your hands if you have a question, and we'll have like short answers right now, but we could always follow up with more resources, and we could always follow up and contact Mihir sir more later if you have any follow-up questions as well. So the floor is open, so you can go ahead and raise your hand.
We have one from Arka Mitra right now who's wanting to ask, sir. You are unmute and you can probably ask your question now.
Hello, sir. Thank you so much for this informative talk. I was wondering, could you tell us on what grounds the Supreme Court rejected the petitions to stay the act?
Should I answer? Yeah. See, ordinarily when a legislation is passed, 99% of the times the Supreme Court never grants a stay on a legislative exercise because it does gone through Parliament, etc. And they finally decide the matter, and at that time they decide whether to strike down a legislation or uphold it. So that is likely to happen by February or March. So ordinarily that is what is done. In this case, I guess that would be the only reason why they have done that. I was hoping that they would stay the enforcement of the law, but I do not think that that's such a dangerous thing, because in order for this law to play itself out in reality, it will take minimum 6 months to 8 months, before which the case will be decided. So let me put it very frankly, I am not very hopeful of the Supreme Court. Let me put it. If you ask me whether I have too much hope in the president, my answer would be no. Okay, but at the same time, we have to try, and we are trying that.
I have a question here on the private chat, which says Article 14 is applicable to all persons, does not mention that religion can be grounds for discrimination. Article 15, applicable to citizens, prohibits such discrimination. Does this present a problem for us?
Well, only marginally, only partially, because Article 15 is an example of Article 14, is an instance of Article 14. Article 14 is the broad overarching equality clause, which says that everybody will be treated equally, and that applies to non-citizens also. Okay. So while arguing, and plus now Supreme Court has also held that you don't need to show discrimination. If you show that some action of the legislation is arbitrary, okay, you can still strike it down under Article 14. You don't have to take recourse to the 15 or 16 articles. So yes, it's marginally a problem, but that by itself, I don't think can stop the Supreme Court from striking down the law.
Is there any other question?
We don't have it at this point in time, so probably we can move on to the next speaker.
All right, so
I have a question.
Okay. Please go ahead.
I have raised my hand. I have a question.
All right.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Are you listening to me?
Yes, we are listening.
I am Tabassum. I am a Jamia Millia Islamia student. Okay, I was there when all this happened. I've just come home on 17 under parental pressure. And today also, in my city, in Varanasi, all of my BHU students, I think there were about 70 people who have been arrested. They were detained and now they have been taken to the jail. Okay, and under such though all are students, some are research scholars, some are students, and there are undergraduate students as well. So now I have a lot of implications, questions and confusions regarding the NRC and CAB. Our Home Minister is completely saying that it has nothing to do with Indian Muslims. So my question is that had it been this case, then why hasn't he at least mentioned the word Indian Muslims in that? He doesn't. He has said in the parliament that he doesn't want Muslims from Pakistan, Afghanistan, or Bangladesh. So you want Muslims of India to stay here now? Then at least that word should have been included in the CAA. It hasn't been included. Another question that I have, so I have gone through that bill very properly. in the lower section it has been mentioned, people except Muslims, all would be given, all the cases pending for them in any court would be scrapped, and they would be granted citizenship under any circumstances. So why is the only special treatment given to the Muslims, and is our country ready to accept so many immigrants from the neighboring countries, and are people from that country ready to come to our country? And has our Prime Minister or our Foreign Minister done any bilateral talks with Afghanistan, Bangladesh or Pakistan? That has not been done. We don't have any data regarding immigrants, neither in Assam or the Northeast, not in the rest of the India. We had the problem of illegal immigrants in Assam, and that should have been restricted to that state only. There is no need to bring the all India NRC. And they don't know what implications will this have on the economy.
Thank you, Tabassum. That's we can understand how deep the issue is, and yes, of course, there are a number of related facets to it. So we are going to be looking at if we could make the question a little more compact, it would be helpful for Sir to address it. So if I understood it correctly, you want to understand why special treatment is being given to persecuted minorities from a specific few countries, and whether or not the governments of those countries have been consulted while there was the data that was considered or not considered, presumably considered for the basis of this law. Is that your question? I just wanted to clarify.
Yes, that is my question.
All right,
and
thank you.
Also, is our country ready to face that much economic burden?
All right, so I would request you to hold on to your questions. We'll have one of them answered now. We still have 2 more speakers to go. So maybe you would get your answers in when it comes to the next speakers. But let Sir answer the question, the first question first, because we also have to move on a little bit and address other questions. So if it's okay with you, we'll wait for the next speakers. All right? All right. Sir, please go ahead with the question.
Yeah, very simply, let me put it this way. Like now, the answer I'm giving you is not as a LLB lawyer, but as a human rights lawyer. Okay, don't for a moment think that the present government is interested in dealing in having some bilateral talks. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to hit out at Muslims. Let's be very clear about that. Okay, and therefore whatever they are doing, okay, there is no logic or reason to it. Okay, the logic or reason is somewhere in Manusmriti or wherever, or Golwalkar's bunch of thoughts, but not in the constitution. So what we are saying is that the constitution doesn't permit it, and that's why we are going to fight it out in courts, fight it out in streets. Obviously in a non-violent way in which constitution permits it, but that's what we are saying. So so getting exasperated about our government not seeing reason really doesn't take us anywhere, because the government has its own reasons, and which are different from what we would consider constitutional reasons, logical reasons.
There are many more questions. We request everybody to keep putting them on a comment chat so that we can take them up later after all the speakers have spoken. So continue posting them on the chat box. Thank you.
All right, and now we move on to our next speaker, Dr. Mujibur Rahman. A little bit about Dr. Rahman is that he teaches at Jamia Millia Central University, New Delhi. He's the editor of Communalism in Post-Colonial India, Changing Contours. He contributes op-eds and reviews in the Hindu, the Hindustan Times, the Telegraph, etc., and is currently writing a book on the Muslim mind. We would love to welcome you, sir, and we would love to hear from you about the Hindu-Muslim relationships and the rights, and how it's all being affected by the current climate and this law. So over to you, sir.
Well, I would basically rehash the argument of how the Hindu-Muslim Brotherhood or social harmony between these two communities, which has been on a rough road for a very long time. There are ups and downs over the years. And of course, since 1947, ever since we declared India as a secular country, this relationship has faced many challenges. There are years and occasions when it appeared that things were improving considerably, and there are times when it appeared as if things are going downhill. So I would just like to make a brief comment. I think one of the ways of looking at contemporary political developments, including the current one, this whole effort and the enormous amount of determination that the government has to push through these twin laws. One is already passed and other is likely to be introduced, which is why there is this national protest against it. In order to make sense of it, one has to have certain understanding of the larger picture. The larger picture is that we need to go back to 100 years of our history, and one comes across that 100 years ago in 1920s, there were three political forces, ideological forces, who were working in tandem for a common objective, but each of them had a very different vision of India. They were working together to fight British colonialism and make India independent. And but they all had a different kind of India. So one of them was, of course, the secularists and multiculturalists, who believed that Hindu-Muslim could live together, broadly led by Congress and then left and a lot of other forces. Then you have Muslim separatists who wanted a Muslim land for Muslims. And then you have the Hindu Rashtravadi who wanted India to become a Hindu majoritarian state. And so these are the three broad forces who were working with it. By 1940s and late 40s, two of them succeeded. And the Hindu Rashtravadi were the marginal force. Today they have become hegemonic. In fact, they have competed with the secularists and multiculturalists according to their rules, according to the rules established by the secularists, and have outsmarted them slowly and have become an hegemonic force. So what we're witnessing today is essentially an ideological struggle where Hindu majoritarian ideology is trying to play all kinds of games in the name of constitution, and carefully using various symbols of either Ambedkar or Gandhi or constitution in order to extend their own ideological footprint and choreograph the Indian society based on their own vision. The central to that is this whole ideology that India is a Hindu country and Hindus should be the citizens of this country and others should not. And even if the bill has come recently, so this obviously effort has been followed by a very comprehensive strategy. In order to achieve this goal, they have to first denigrate and denounce secularism, which is what they did successfully. Although in the parliament debate, our home minister said that listen, you look at, during the partition time, it was decided that respective countries would look at their religious minorities. And in our country, Muslims have flourished, whereas in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, non-Muslims have suffered and paid a big price and persecuted. Now, in all these years, his party and his ideologies have often accused Muslims as the pampered community, or they were appeased. And as if every Muslim has become a billionaire or has drawn some sort of extra legal benefits out of the whole thing about it, which is not true. As all of us know, that based on the official report of Sachar Committee of 2006, the socioeconomic conditions of Muslims have deteriorated significantly. And there was a need for state intervention in order to uplift them. The second thing is this, that Hindu-Muslim riots, which has taken place for a variety of reasons. And there has been a significant rise of it in the last couple of years. And there is a significant difference in a manner that riots that took place before 2014 and the riots that is taking place these days. The big difference is that in previous cases, the state would often mediate, bring reconciliation. There would be often a committee headed by some judge, report would be prepared. But often, sometimes most of these reports are not respected. There was a considerable amount of delay for that, but at least the report is prepared. Nowadays, no such effort is witnessed. If there is a riot, let's say, and the victims are often presented as perpetrators. So if you look at Kasganj, if you look at a lot of violence that taken place, most of them are small scale because they want what some scholars are saying, that they want to keep the polarization going, because polarization helps these things, helps consolidation of Hindu votes in favor of BJP, according to research. So in that sense, Hindu-Muslim communalism, there is a massive shift in the character of it. So it's no longer where state makes an effort. Whenever there used to be a riot, there would be a peace committee, and the collector would come and they would sit down, they'll discuss and how to reconcile. But based on the studies of Muzaffarnagar, for instance, the victims were asked and given compensation, but were asked not to return. And the violence took place when BJP government was not. It was a Samajwadi Party government which was in charge. And it was the Samajwadi Party government which did these things. There were efforts to request all the victims and pressurized that they should withdraw their cases against the perpetrators. So that is how the whole issue, which is essentially an attempt to dilute the rights that individuals and communities enjoys under Constitution, and essentially generate a sense of hopelessness. So what this bill has done is this, that when you look at the public debate in a manner it has unfolded, on the one hand, your Home Minister and Prime Minister trying to explain that these are all persecuted people who are persecuted in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in Bangladesh, and we are trying to give them citizenship because this is the land from where they're connected and they have come back to live there and have their new life. But the question is, most of the people who are protesting, particularly secularists, they are not objecting for this, against this. They're not saying that those who are the victims of persecution, they should not, Hindus or Buddhists or Jains, they should be denied, or they should not, government would remain indifferent to them. What they are basically, the attempt by the regime is to generate some sort of awareness among ordinary people who are not that well versed, that as if secularists or the secular forces are trying to deny the victims of religious persecution of citizenship. Now, one of the big arguments that was presented in the parliament, that since Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh happen to be Islamic countries, so Muslims are not expected to be persecuted. Now, the question is, India is officially a secular country, but we have plenty of riots, we have plenty of religious discriminations, we have plenty of all of these things have been happening. The fact that there is something there in the constitution or the government officially claims does not mean that that is being practiced. In reality, you will come across something very different from what is officially claimed. So clearly, those who are behind the formulation of the law, they have no understanding how religious persecution operates. One of the most prominent example of a persecuted community setting up a country and trying to practice religious freedom is America. The Americans who experience religious persecution, they did not experience persecution from non-Christians. Most of them faced persecutions from Christian communities because it was a sectarian persecution within the Christian community from various parts of Europe and others about it. So this whole argument, just because that a country proclaims that it happens to be an Islamic country and therefore Muslims are not persecuted, is a wrong idea. It's a misleading interpretation,
10 minutes up.
inadequate understanding of religious persecution. The other thing I wanted to add is that there is this whole argument being made of that nobody bothers about Hindu. This is the only country where Hindus are to be saved and protected. The fact is that if you look at the migration, look at United States, you can look at United Kingdom, Australia, there are many Hindus who have migrated. Most of them are very well off on their own. I'm not saying that they ran away because of persecution. The fact is that the whole world is open to people, whether on the basis of their ability or for XYZ reasons, to migrate and accept them. So that is where, which is a consequence of a great deal of struggle that the world has witnessed over the years, and human rights and religious tolerance and respect for various religions. So I think there is an attempt by the Hindu right to generate this kind of fear, and that nobody bothers about Hindus, and these are the custodians of the Hindu community, and that they have a historic responsibility to do that. So my sense is this, that all these things in the larger context of what has been unfolding over the last several years has a tremendous consequences in terms of perpetuating prejudices against Muslims, and at different levels, from villages to the cities, and that has a lot of consequences, So I would like to stop here, and then we can carry on from here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was truly very informative, right from charting our historical trajectory to actually bringing forth the very important point that when we try to understand persecution in countries where there is one majority population, to actually assume that there is not enough persecution amongst the majority community itself is something we need to consider. So we would like to open the floor for questions. We'll take around 3 to 4 questions. And if you have multiple related questions, we would again ask you to type it in the chat box so we can take it at the end.
So we have one from Pinaki here, and then there are 2 more. So, but I'm not sure if it relates to, Pinaki, would you like to read them out and also clarify who would you like to direct this question to? I think I'll just unmute him.
Yes, we have to unmute him perhaps.
He's unmuted already.
Okay. Pinaki, can you hear us?
I can't hear from him. But I can certainly read out his questions, and if sir would like to answer them or pass them on, then
yes, Subi, go ahead, read his question.
Okay, so the first question is on what basis does speakers and some participants get a feel that CAA even apply to resident Indians? Second, there is a distinction between CAA and NRC. How's that impact how does that impact on distinguishing religions? If there is reference, can any speaker point out in the NRC? Understanding that CAA doesn't even apply to Indians, so by not supporting the act, aren't people being discriminatory against religious minorities in neighborhood countries? How do we propose a solution and include Muslims in CAA or stop all refugees irrespective of religions?
Yeah. Should I answer this?
Sure, if you would like to.
Well, as I said that I think Mir Desai Sahab also has explained it during his commentaries. This is an ideological project, and this ideological project has multiple steps. So this very act that looks so innocent obviously is not entirely isolated. And it clearly has a majoritarian character and spirit behind it. And exclusion of Muslims is one of them. But if one looks at the regime's approach, overall approach, and the strategy, the regime always makes a case for Muslims. There is always a reason, a plausible reason the regime gives that Muslims must be excluded because of this. It begins from the claim that Bharatiya Janata Party, which is essentially the political wing, first of all, does not offer tickets to Muslims. Because if you ask them, they would say, well, we don't discriminate on the basis of religion. Muslims are not winnable, and therefore we have not given tickets. So Muslims were never given ticket in Gujarat in all the 3 elections that Mr. Modi won. Muslims were not given tickets in 2014 and 2017, and 1 or 2 cases on odd cases, and most of the states where BJP is a powerful political party, ruling party in most cases. Of course, the clear purpose is essentially to exclude Muslims from the power structure. Since the argument is that ideological argument is that let them leave, but they can't be part of any decision-making process. We will decide how they will leave, what they need, and what they don't need about it. So this has been going on for many years, right? The second is, say for instance, Rohingya. The moment you realize, well, Rohingyas are the most persecuted religious community today in modern world. And then the explanation by the Home Minister is they're the security threat. And during the parliamentary debate, he said, well, they come through Bangladesh, and since we're not allowing Muslims from Bangladesh, we can't let them in. Well, if they're coming through Bangladesh, why don't you directly pick them up from Burma itself? Send a flight and pick them up. They don't have to go to Bangladesh. They go to Bangladesh because that's their nearest border, right? So there is always a reason that this regime offers to exclude Muslims. And looking at that particular aspect, that essentially helps you to understand the overall ideological portrait or the vision which motivates this regime. So from that point of view, it would be naive to look at that this very act is entirely independent of what is the next step. And apparently the next step is very clear, and Home Minister, even after several days of national protest in different cities and universities, has made it very clear and several chief ministers have already opposed the idea of NRC. He has made it clear that we are going to come out with it. Now we have a country where even the voters list not adequately prepared, correctly prepared. Even in a city of capital where I live, there are hundreds and thousands of people who live on the streets, and we have never shown much interest building night shelters for them. Each time during the winter time, there are appeals by various television and media groups and some NGOs that we should give our blankets, and after 2 months or few weeks, that's forgotten. But we have plenty of resources to put together detention centers where we drag people who are already leading their own life and force them into these centers and deny them from basic human rights, because we have found out that they happen to be illegal. So we have an extremely poor record, as one of the member of parliament, Mahua Mitra, told in the parliament, that your ministers, including prime minister, who has not been able to produce certificates from the universities, prestigious universities they have been studied. Now you ask all these poor people who live under difficult circumstances, where they face extreme floods. Most of these people who live in Assam and elsewhere, Orissa, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, they often face all these situations. Most of them live in mud houses, and all these things get destroyed, and you expect them to produce various documents, keep them, and all of that stuff about it. So when one looks at all of that, this particular rule or this particular act doesn't seem to be as innocent as it is being presented to everybody. More importantly, two prominent lawmakers who have been going around and saying that this is not applied to Indian Muslims, they have said similar things on other issues, and they have broken their own commitment on those issues about it. For instance, they did tell the Abdullahs when they visited Abdullah to the Prime Minister that, we're not going to do anything about 370. Then the 370 disappeared next day morning. So their track record is so one should not take all these assurances that they're giving that nothing would happen very seriously. Because one has no idea, and one has some clear idea, or most average people have no idea, the hidden and at the same time apparent ideological objective. So one has to be a bit careful about it, which is why it is important to resist at this particular point of time, legally, politically, and intellectually.
Thank you, sir. As you have explored very exhaustively multiple angles, and we're really grateful for that. We would now be moving on to the next speaker, and we will come back to questions again at the end when we are doing our reflection session.
Thank you.
So now we move on to our final speaker for tonight, which is Mr. Basit Jamal. So a little bit about Mr. Basit Jamal. He is the recipient of the prestigious Ashoka Fellowship in 2017 and is a co-author of UNESCO's Manual on Prevention of Violent Extremism called Youth Waging Peace. He's a grassroots interfaith activist who's also the founder of Brotherhood of Humanity. He has worked exhaustively to repurpose the power of religion to be a solution for conflicts and has extensive experience working with students from schools, colleges, madrasas, and worshippers in the mosque. So today he will be speaking to us about the perception of the Muslim community, particularly their interpretations of the CAB and the NRC and the implication as they understand it on these grassroots communities. Over to you, Basit.
Thank you so much, Sohini. And if my internet becomes slow, then I'll switch off my video. So, let me first clarify my political stand. I'm not from any political party. My politics is about love. Anybody who aligns with love, I'm with that person, whatever political party that is. So, otherwise people say, oh, he's a leftist, or he's a Congress, or he's from BJP. And, the people who stand for love, they often feel like that. One party says you are from that party and the other party says you're from that party. So this has happened a lot with me. So, many of the things have been covered by respected Mihir Desai sir and respected Mujibur Rahman sir. One question has been posed by this lady called Pinky Dasgupta on the chat. So what I'm about to speak, what I'll speak on will actually be answering all her points. I personally do not have any problem with CAA or NRC. When you look at these laws separately, there is absolutely no problem. The problem begins when the combination of these two laws has a potential outcome on the Muslims. So if you just debate about CAA, it looks very good. Fine. It is perfect. No problem, If you just discuss about NRC, it looks fine. It looks perfect. But these two laws has a combined potential outcome for the Indian Muslims. What the supporters, of CAA and NRC are doing is they want to debate this, in separate silos. But hey, they have a combination effect on the population. So, I am not against any of these laws in particular. I'm against what these two laws mean to a big population of India, which is Muslims. So if there is a NRC, I know so many people who do not who will not be able to prove that their grandfather or their father was born in India. How will they prove? You know, if I go to the airport, you know, I have a ticket and I go for immigration, you know, they ask me for a passport. I can produce the passport because I was issued the passport. When India got divided, did the government issue a citizenship certificate to each and every citizen? Did they? So if they did not, how can you ask? In 1945, you know, 1940s, you know, people were being born in homes. You know, there were no birth certificates. In fact, you know, there will be so many people born in 1970s and 60s who will not have, you know, birth certificates. So, you know, this is a big, huge problem. And as, you know, the earlier two speakers have clarified that, you know, anybody who is not a Muslim will find citizenship. They can just say, I've, you know, moved here. I don't have any documents. I just entered through, you know, I was persecuted. But the Muslim, you know, could be put in that bracket where, you know, he'll be called, you don't have documents. Your documents is, you know, in the Assam NRC, if you produce a document, they put a stamp of D, doubtful. You know, I will even say that, you know, all these laws are with good intentions. Okay, let's not be suspicious that, you know, the government is up to something. Let's not be suspicious. From that point of view, I speak. You know, in India, laws are misused. Laws are misused like anything. Mistakes happen. Inefficiencies, you know, we know, all Indians know how efficient we are in implementing policies. So, you know, who pays the price for any of these things? For any of the mistakes, for any of the misuse, for any of the, you know, inefficiency in the process. You know, again, would people go for their jobs? Would they work for their business? Would they sit on the shop? Or would they stand in queues? Would they go and stand in lines? So these are all the problems that these two laws are creating. You know, so what could be one of the solutions to it? You know, many people are asking, what is the solution to the problem? You know, what the narrative why this law or these laws are bringing, the narrative behind it is that, you know, there are a lot of illegal immigrants, and illegal immigrants should be thrown out. So, you know, you can't say, yes, this should not happen. You can't say. So what is the solution? But, you know, this is the problem they are bringing. They say, you know, NRC has happened in other countries. Fine, but, you know, the dynamics in India is very different. So what could be the solution? You know, okay, I was talking to a friend of mine who was, you know, staunchly supporting CAA and NRC. So I spoke to him in his language. You know, so I spoke, you know, let me speak as a, you know, diehard, you know, patriot, you know, which I am, but, you know, of a particular kind that, you know, on, you know, who continuously talks on religion, in a very divisionary and hateful manner. You know, I asked him that, you know, 1,200 crore rupees have been spent in Assam, in just one state, which is 12 billion Indian rupees have been spent in one state just to build detention centers. 1,600 crore rupees, that is 16 billion rupees, have been spent in conducting the whole exercise. And if you put people in detention centers, that's not where it ends. You are not going to starve them out, are you? You're going to, you know, still continue paying, you know, you feed them. You know, there's a continuous expenses that you incur in any such thing. So how much would you spend if this exercise happens in NRC, and regular Muslims who's you know, like one of the sirs says that, you know, people live in mud houses in villages, and when floods come, you know, everything gets washed away. When such a person, you know, gets stuck in such a situation that he's a Muslim and he does not really have a document, but he's an Indian. He has been living there forever. So what is the solution? I told him that, point one, seal the Bangladesh border. Just you have sealed the Pakistan border. Don't let anyone enter. That's what the government should have done. Point two, Instead of spending 1,200 crores on just detention centers in just one state, use that money to rehabilitate all those people, whether Hindus or Muslims, who have come to India. These people are our race. These people are our culture. These people are our DNA. These people are our language. These people were not those who went to the Britishers to say that, Bharat ko todo, divide India. These were not the people. For whatever circumstances they have come. And because of this law, many people will suffer. If there's a crowd and a thief is running, and there's a crowd, there are 100 more people running, the police can't start shooting one person, giving the example that, oh, he's running away, so I need to shoot. Because, there are 100 innocent people who can be hit by your bullet. So this is the kind of law, they're brought. It does not care about, what kind of, mistakes that can happen. You're just shooting at illegal immigrants, but a lot of genuine Indian Muslim citizens can be affected by this. So the third point, if the Assamese don't want, they are also Hindus and they don't want other Hindus with them, then, bring them out of that state and, put them, redistribute them all across the country where they are acceptable. This is another solution to CAA and NRC, which is much more, easier, less expenses, without, less controversy. Look at this law, what it has done. What it has done is that, the government isn't happy, the protester isn't happy.
Basit, you're on mute. If you could unmute yourself, please. Basit?
Okay. Sorry. My internet was getting slow, so I wanted to switch off the video. So, okay. So, what I was saying was that, where was I? Can anyone remind me? Where was I? Can anyone remind me? Where was I?
You were talking about how the law is such a law that it's like, if the police start shooting to, like if there are a number of people running and the police start shooting with the excuse of shooting one and accidentally hit others. So the law, you were drawing an analogy with that. You're muted again. You need to unmute yourself. Hello? That's it? Subi, is it possible to unmute him? You are muted too.
I'm unable to unmute him. Basit bhai, look onto your left-hand side. We're just losing him maybe. Yeah, his internet connection is very unstable maybe, and that's why we've lost him.
But he's still on the call. He just doesn't know how to, he's not being able to unmute, sorry. I'll just see if I can do that. Sorry for the interruption. I'll just see.
His computer is hanging on the internet, and I think that's the reason why we are unable to also. He's also unable to unmute himself.
I'll just try once. That's it. I can't unmute him. The connection is not stable, probably. We'll just wait for a few minutes. Did we lose him, Subi?
We did.
Oh.
Robbie will rejoin us back.
All right. So, we've lost him. Okay. So, while we wait for him to come back and join us, we could perhaps quickly go for a reflection session, and I also wanted to point out something, which is when you're please typing in your questions in in the chat box, mention your name, because for certain people, we only have the device name and not the name of the person. So we don't know who's asking the question. And also it would be good if you could kindly mention who you're asking the question to, or who is it that you would want to take the question, to answer it. So that would be helpful. And Sandeep, do we start with reflections now, just so that we use our time well till...
Give me a minute, I'll try calling him.
Yeah, okay.
Steve has a question in the chat box.
Yeah.
We'll just try to call him.
Wait. Okay.
Can Mihir sir answer the question that Anshdeep has asked?
Yes.
Should I?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Before this, just let me quickly go into the larger issue, which is that NRC. What is NRC? NRC is basically a register of citizens, based on what is the definition of citizen under the Citizenship Act. What NRC is. It defines who is, it will tell you who is a citizen and who is not a citizen. And in order to decide who is a citizen, it will go back to the Citizenship Act, which is being amended through the new law. And therefore, NRC and this new act are very extremely connected. Okay? Now, my first thing was that, I mean, I am personally totally against either NRC or CAA. Let me put it clearly. I am against NRC because NRC is based on documentary proof being produced by people who might be staying here for donkey's years, who might have been born here, whose parents may have been born here, in a society where documentation is not ideally being, not something which is being done regularly. Even if you have an Aadhaar card, for instance, just to give you an example, the Aadhaar Act says that merely having an Aadhaar card will not prove that you are a citizen. Okay? Similarly with ration cards, similarly with other cards. Okay? Now, a large number of people, even in villages, get born in their homes, not in hospitals, don't register their births, etc., etc. Assam, if you see, the situation is slightly different because Assam's citizenship is to be decided on the basis of date of entry into Assam. That is, if you have entered Assam before 71, you are a citizen. If you have entered Assam after 71, you are a non-citizen. So in Assam, what you have to show is that you have entered Assam before 71. In rest of India, you have to show that you are born in India. Okay, so the kind of documentation which you require in Assam is different from the kind of documentation you require in India. That's point number 8. As far as the intelligible differential argument is concerned, yes, it can be made by the state is definitely going to make that argument about intelligible differentials. It's a legal argument. I may not go into it too much in detail in this discussion, but basically, the argument being that you can reasonably explain the exclusion of Muslims, okay, from the law, and since you can reasonably explain the exclusion of the Muslims, you can. This law is bad, okay? Because classification per se between Muslims and non-Muslims is not bad if you can explain it reasonably with the object sought to be achieved. So this is going to be an argument, the counter to which is going to be that Muslims are not a homogeneous whole, even in Pakistan, that there are Shias who claim they are persecuted, there are others who claim they are persecuted. Have you at all done any study to find out who is persecuted, who is not, and come to this conclusion, or is it just a kind of a political statement that you are making? So this is so this argument is definitely going to be made by the state, but I think we should be able to counter it. Yes, that was my answer.
There is another question.
Yeah, what is this?
I think we could let Shantini start reading out to us the questions because she's been curating them. So we are still waiting for Basit Bhai to join us, but then I think we should go ahead with the questions.
Okay.
Shantanu, over to you.
Okay, so I have a question here from Adarsh MCPR. It's not mentioned in particular who the question is directed at, so I'm just going to read it out. The question goes like this. Our resources are limited and the Prime Minister has asked from the Red Fort that we need to minimize our pollution, and now the government is allowing more people in. Isn't that going to affect the economy? I think it's population. No, he has written pollution. But okay, maybe it's population. So, yeah, so Prime Minister has asked from the Red Fort that we need to minimize our population, and now the government is allowing more people. Isn't it going to affect the economy? So, if should I read out all the questions? I think it's best to go one question at a time, right? So, okay.
Let Mudlivar sir answer this.
Mujibur sir, if you could take this question about how it's going to affect the economy, if we are to allow the influx of persecuted refugees from these particular nations.
Well, you know, the impact on the economy depends on the sort of economy you maintain. You see, if an individual could be an asset to an economy, an individual could also be a liability to an economy. An individual, if he is, well equipped, have skills, he can generate jobs, and therefore we are not just depending on the natural resources. So we are a country, say 30, 40 years ago, our population was half of what it is today, but we still managed to live and move on in our life. So similarly, so this economy argument is it does not make much sense, because we are a big country, and if we are interested in being accommodative, everybody does not have to have, nowadays people do build homes which are, multiple flats and all of that stuff about it. So people could be accommodated in different places. So there is, in any case, we have a significant rise of population. So it's just, make an effort to kind of give all this stupid explanation to scare people about that. Because imagine if you have, say, how many people are there? 5 crores. You add 5 crores population to the existing population in a span of, let's say, 2 years, right? But if you don't add them to your population, first of all, a lot of these refugees, it is being claimed that they are already inside. So they are already staying with us in various parts of Rajasthan, maybe in some other parts of Uttar Pradesh or Assam or West Bengal. They are in any case using resources, right? So therefore, you are not adding anything new to it. But if you say you are going to welcome, say, 500 million people, in any case, given the way that the population explodes in our country, or population rises in our country, so within a year or two, you will have greater population than that, whether you add or you don't add to it. So it does not, this two argument has economy and this whole issue there is no connection between the two. What is a challenge is that whether we are in a position to offer education and health facilities to our own people. Can we use, we are putting billions of dollars in buying so-called cutting edge weapons. And partly because of the fact that we have this imaginary understanding of security in which we think that we are going to be warred maybe tomorrow, maybe after 2 months or so. Therefore, we need all these weapons. But, if we build up good relationship with our neighbors, and we could be able to cut short a lot of this stuff and invest those resources elsewhere. So there are various ways you can address it. If you try to, like the life of a human being, a nation state has to prioritize its resources. And so therefore I personally don't see that there is any causal connection between the economy and this particular act and all of that stuff about it.
Okay, so I think we can move on to the next question. So the next question And I don't know who this is from because their name is not showing. It asks, why is NRC a bigger threat than the CAA? Can the constitutional amendments be made without taking the states in confidence?
Well, let me try and answer. As far as a constitutional amendment is concerned, there has been no constitutional amendment. It's an amendment to an act. So there is no question of, under the constitutional scheme, there is no question of talking to the states about that. Though in an ideal federal structure, you would have to take the views of the states. But if you see the constitutional scheme, it doesn't require, because you are amending a central act. Why is NRC a greater threat than CAA? Because NRC will affect Hindu, Muslims, everybody equally if you are unable to produce documents of birth. Okay? So whether you are a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian or whatever, okay, if you are unable to prove that you were born, there is a connected question which I see when I'm reading this chat, which is about the Citizenship Act of 1955, 87, 2003 and 2012. I guess everybody is able to read that because this, what I'm answering is connected to both the things. See, Citizenship Act is only one, that is of 1955. It was amended in 87. Okay. 1955 Act basically said that a person who is born in India will be an Indian citizen. Okay. 87 said that, okay, a person born in India will be an Indian citizen before this date, that is before 87, but after 87, it's not enough that you are born in India. One of your parents should be a citizen of India when you are born here. That was what the 87 amendment said. So after 87, you, citizenship, you have to be born plus one of your parents has to be a citizen. That was a change. And in 2003, the change was that not only should one of your parents be a citizen when you were born in India, but also the second parent should not be an illegal migrant. So this was the change which was brought about by the various amendments. But the act remains the same. That is one act, the Universal Act, that is the Citizenship Act. CAA, what it does is it further amends the Citizenship Act to bring in this additional aspect. So the reason why, because even if tomorrow CAA was to go, suppose tomorrow the Supreme Court struck down CAA, even then NRC would still remain. Please remember that NRC would still remain, and that is where you see I've been to Assam for at least 15-20 days, and I've visited all the districts for NRC work. I've gone there, and I've visited a number of districts in Assam. Poor people who have been there for hundreds of years, they have no documents. It's a flood-prone area. Documents get, go off. They have no proof that they are staying here. Women get married into a particular house, into a particular village. They have no proof that they've been married, or they are not Bangladeshis, etc., etc. So it's a crazy situation. Hindus, I saw a large number of Hindus who have been there for hundreds of years, having documents and therefore being thrown out of NRC. So NRC by itself is also a danger. The reason why I would be opposed to NRC is that you want to decide who is a citizen. You already have enough laws. Okay? You feel somebody is, if I am in India and I am voting in India, I am a citizen. What more you need? You still think that I have there is a law which allows you to prosecute me saying that I am a foreigner. Prosecute me. But can't have this national register of citizens where crores of people will be ousted from the citizenship at one go. Okay? That is a harm, and that is what I feel is dangerous about NRC also. So I would oppose NRC, I would oppose CAA, I would oppose both. That's how I would look at it.
Okay, so the next question or questions is by Pinaki Dasgupta. There are a number of questions. I'll try to break them down. The first one is there is a distinction between CAA and NRC. How does that impact or distinguish between religions? The second question is that understanding that CAA doesn't even apply to Indians. So by not supporting the act, aren't people being discriminatory against religious minorities in neighborhood countries? How do we propose a solution?
We have asked this.
Has this been already discussed?
The second question.
Okay. Okay. So then I will move on to his third question, which is how is the Citizenship Act 1955, 1987, 2003, and 2012 relevant in the light of today's
That
scenario?
has also been discussed. That I just answered actually.
Okay. Okay. So then the next question is from Shazik, and he's asking that there is this huge controversy that if CAB and NRC are read together, then all the citizens will have to prove their identity by tracing ancestor roots. By virtue of CAA, all the Hindus, Christians, etc., except the Muslims will become citizens, even if they are found to be illegal immigrants, whereas the Muslims will remain illegal and eventually lose citizen rights. He frames it as a comment and says, I would like to know more about this. So can we add something to what he has written here?
Can you go to the next question? If there are two questions that I can answer.
Okay. Okay. So the other question that I have here is, what can be a way forward if the CAA has to be revoked? How can individual citizens make it happen?
Okay. Like I said, then Mujibur Saab can also respond. My personal thing, you see, there is also a question which I see on the chat, which says that since Supreme Court is supervising the entire process of NRC, how do we challenge it? First of all, remember one thing. Tomorrow, Supreme Court may say yes to the process. So tomorrow, the Supreme Court may say no to the process. Okay. Suppose Supreme Court says that this entire process is wrong. That's fine. Hunky-dory, we go home happy. But if the Supreme Court says no, this is a valid law, CAA. Let's look at CAA, that it's a valid law. Okay? That doesn't stop us from criticizing the law. So that doesn't stop us from criticizing the Supreme Court judgment. Please remember, criticizing a judgment of the Supreme Court is not contempt. Okay, as long as it's temperate criticism, etc. Supreme Court is only concerned with the constitutionality of a law. We are today talking about the morality of a law. So we're not talking about constitutionality. If we feel that something is immoral, something is against secularism, we have every right to talk about it, no matter what Supreme Court thinks about it. Please remember that. Putting all our eggs in the basket of Supreme Court is something which I never agree with, and we should never do. Even if the Supreme Court says it's constitutional, I would still go on the streets and protest against this law. Let me make my stand very clear on this point. Okay? Yeah. So that is what I have to say.
So, is there any more reflections from anyone after this very informative session? Or we were thinking of moving on to when we had people RSVP us, we had a few recommendations of points and questions that people would want to specifically know. So as the call is being
one
recorded,
question that's coming into me, I think it's directed towards Mihir sir only. And it says that, so my question is that there is huge controversy that if CAB and NRC are read together, then all the citizens will have to prove their identity by tracing the ancestral roots. By virtue of CAA, all the Hindus they are found illegal migrants. Would you like?
Can't hear you.
So, your voice was not very clear. I think it's the network. Perhaps you could repeat the question.
Subi, can you type your question? I think then it might be easier.
The question is, there is huge controversy that if CAB, CAA and NRC are read together, then all the citizens will have to prove their identity by tracing to the ancestral roots. By virtue of CAA, all the Hindu, Christians, etc., except the Muslims will become citizens even if they are found to be illegal migrants. Whereas the Muslims will remain illegal and eventually lose citizen rights. Could you please elaborate?
I'll just very, very shortly answer this question. See, it's like this, that on paper, whether you include CA or don't include CA, on paper, If you have been born in, say for instance, you were born in India in 1980 and you have a birth certificate to show that you were born in India in 1980, then you will be a citizen, whether you Muslim, Hindu, Christian, whatever. Then you are a citizen of India. There is no dispute on that. That if I have the proof of birth in India, okay, especially before 87, okay, then there is no problem about me being a citizen, declared a citizen, irrespective of my religion. If it's after 87, one parent, etc., which I told you earlier. Okay, so if I have proof of birth, it's not a problem. The problem arises if I don't have proof of birth. We do not know today what are the documents which are going to be accepted, okay, as proof of birth. Tomorrow, if they say that no, even if you have a ration card, it is fine, maybe a lot more people will get covered. But if but we don't know today. It's too early to assume as to what will be treated as proof of birth. Under the law today, the only proof of birth is a birth certificate. Okay, so if I don't have a birth certificate, I'm out. Okay. So if CAB, and as I explained earlier, if CAB and this NRC are combined, okay, then if I don't have proof, if I don't have proof of birth as a Muslim, okay, I'll be treated as an illegal immigrant and therefore not entitled to citizenship. If I don't have proof of birth as a Hindu, I can still argue that I have come from Pakistan and therefore give me citizenship. So that's the major difference.
We tried reaching out to Masim Bhai, but he's unreachable.
No, I was only saying that can I go for dinner now?
Sure. Sandeep Bhai, would you like to give a final note?
Okay, sure. Mujib, would you like to say something before we end?
No, I think we had a good discussion.
I would like to ask for the last time if anyone from our very, very patient and responsive audience would like to reflect a little bit on how this session, how what they learned from the session, or how it was useful, and how maybe we could improve, and what their reflections are on this entire discussion overall. So if anybody would like to volunteer.
What?
We are opening the floor for reflections for like the next 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes. So we are going to keep it short because we're about to wind up the call.
There is someone who wants to speak.
Okay.
Joy Jayanti.
So I think Joy Jayanti wants to speak. Okay. So can we have her unmuted, Subhi?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes,
Hi,
Joy Jayanti.
am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for this session. I have a question, really. It's a very general question that obviously this is a very distressing time, and I think we all want to know how best we can help. And as I mentioned earlier that I am a lawyer, and then, we are really trying to sort of get together and educate people, obviously go out on the street and protest and try and reason with people and spread as much information as possible. So just would like the views of this very esteemed group of people that what can be some of the good ways to engage with people and best help in the situation that we are in. Thank you so much.
Okay, so this is a general question. So anyone who has some bright new ideas you would like.
The general. Can I just pitch in?
Yes.
Yeah. There is a considerable amount of very deliberate attempt being made to confuse people.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people are not following debates as closely as all of us are doing.
Right.
Following the political developments as closely as we are doing. So obviously, which is a major threat to the credibility of a lot of these things that's been going on. So, for instance, the government has decided, when you look at the campaign, the Prime Minister says, well, Congress party wants to give citizenship to all Pakistanis. Things of that kind about it. So therefore, the first thing, the attempt from the government side has been to present that as if those who are critical or opposed to the bill are essentially opposed to give citizenship to the non-Muslim victims of persecution, or those who are seeking,
Yeah.
the Hindus, Buddhists, about it.
And I'm
So
so sorry to interject.
we are not secularists are not opposed to the citizenship of all these people.
Yeah.
No,
and what is so scary, like so spot on about what you said, that the act itself does not even use the term persecuted. That
Yeah.
was just floated around in some statements of object and reason, but the act itself does not use it. And then obviously, but most people do not know that. So
yeah,
it becomes so much harder to fight.
Yeah. The second thing is this, that nobody cares about Hindus, and we are the ones who are caring for Hindus, right?
Mm.
The question is this, that it is apparent that we don't describe what happens to Dalits in this country in the language of persecution, but since thousands of years, we have known what has happened to Dalits could be explained as persecution also, though it has been justified and legitimized as caste. Not that we have been very nice to our own people. We have not been very nice to our own people and to our own women. Not long ago, we were burning our own women and justifying it as a practice, religious practice about it. So it's very important that we need to recognize that we do have other issues, and we need to restore humanism in our own land with regard to our own people. We need to restore dignity to our own people and all of that stuff. So this requires a lot of course, discussions. It's not an yes or no situation where you can simply say, well, because of this, we don't want it, and because of this. In fact, we should always ask, as I was saying about it, that, people are living on their own in different parts, even if they appear to be illegal because they don't have documents, whether genuinely or not. But we don't have resources for, say, as I said, to build our night shelters for our own poor people. And even in capitals like Delhi, I'm not talking about small towns here and there. I'm talking about cities of Delhi, half a kilometer further from the Prime Minister's residence. We do have poor people who lie on the street under extreme weather conditions. So I think whatever resources we have, let us focus on that and take care of them, than building up multiple crores of these detention centers, dragging people out of their home and then saying that, and make them suffer, and putting a lot of resources, our resources, again, on this kind of use about it. I think a lot of arguments of this kind, simple arguments, which could be made for popular conversations in terms of this about it. And it's very important. Unfortunately, the reason why I think the government or both Home Minister and Prime Minister get away with all of this is, in my understanding, because, there are a lot of things which are supposed to be done in this country are not done in the last 60, 70 years. So they always say that, since this and on, we are doing it. And so they have earned some degree of legitimacy, and which is what has an electoral majority, which is what gives them some advantage of it. So it is we should try to kind of deconstruct all these arguments and then try to explain to it.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you so much.
So I have another question here that was in the RSVP form, and I think this is something that is an important one. So it asks, can the states truly resist the act and its implementation at the state level?
Yeah, can I try and answer that?
Yeah.
See, I mean, if you look at the constitutional scheme, this is a central law. Okay, and the central government has the power to pass, the parliament has the power to pass law which will be applicable throughout India. That includes all states, whether those states like it or not. Okay, so on paper, it is going to be very difficult. On paper, okay, it's difficult to resist it, especially because under the constitution, the central government has also the power to issue directions to state governments, to follow the directions it gives them, including various directions flowing from this law. Okay, so on paper it's going to be difficult. But what will happen, or what is likely to happen, is that central government will not be able to implement an NRC, especially because CAB doesn't really kickstart till the NRC started. And NRC requires huge amount of human resource, which includes teachers, state government servants, etc., etc. And what the states can do and will do, I believe, is that they will not allow their own own human powers, those opposing it. Okay, they will not allow the human power to be used for NRC purposes, etc. In which case, okay, the central government doesn't have the wherewithal of actually trying to do an NRC. If you want to have a detention center, you require to have land which the state government will have to acquire and give it to the central government and things like that. So there are lots of ifs and buts. I mean, they can drag their feet, the state governments, if they want to, for years together without implementing the law. Drag feet, but if constitutionally they can defy it, it's difficult. They have the risk of president's rule being imposed. But at a ground level, they can really make it very difficult for the central government to implement this law.
Thank you so much, Mihir sir. Thank you, Mujibur sir, and thank you every single person who's taken the time to be with us today. We are unfortunately going to have to close, though if we could, we would discuss more. But I would like you to kindly leave a feedback on our page and definitely keep in touch. We hope to form a community. And now for the closing note, I would invite my colleague and our co-founder, Sandeep, to wrap up this call and to close it. Sandeep, over to you.
Thank you so much. I won't be taking more than 2-3 minutes. Just want to say thank you to everyone.
Sandeep, you're barely audible.
Am I audible now? Am I audible now? Yeah. Well, now I'm going to be Mihir's chair finally. Am I audible? No, we've been.
Yes, you're audible. Go ahead.
So thank you very much. And we have an email ID. It's constitution@gmail.com, KAUNSTITUTION. We look forward to more ideas from all of you for our next week's conversation. We hope to make this a conversation from henceforth. And thank you everyone in the team. It was very well moderated, and I learned a lot. And I hope in the coming sessions we all collectively learn. So we hope to build a small community of learners through technology who can discuss issues about the Constitution on a weekly basis. And this will not be possible if you don't contribute ideas and if you don't guide us about our future talks and themes. So with that, thank you very much, and we'll be meeting next, hopefully after the Christmas vacation. So that would perhaps mean 27th of December. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Subi,